What is up, guys? It's Jacob from QuadHunting, and today we are going to recap the 2015 draft for the Detroit Lions. I did the 2016 last video. Actually, it was 2 videos ago because I did the 2018 recap last video. 2016 was 2 videos ago, and I'm kind of doing these to prove a point that it's kind of stupid to be grading drafts right off the bat, right after they happen, because you don't really know what's going to happen. 2016, we saw a lot of experts giving the Lions a low B, high C grade, and it ended up being a pretty damn good draft. It was really solid all the way up and down. A couple misses here and there, but nothing too bad. Whereas this draft in 2015 kind of is the opposite. We'll get more into that towards the end of the video after I go through all the grades. Again, I went with 2 of my sources for going with grading the draft picks themselves individually, and that is, again, Pride of Detroit's Alex Reno. He always has these, it's so easy to find on Pride of Detroit, these articles that they wrote way back then, and so I used that one again. And this time, instead of using Walter Football, because their website is glitched right now, when I would go to the 2015 draft, I'd try to go to the individual grades, and it would pull up the 2018 draft. So I could not use Walter Football again. So this time I went to Bleacher Report. I went with his grades because he had a nice individual write-up for each individual player that I could use as well. So those are my 2 for that, and then I went with 5 different experts for the entire team grades to see what people were thinking here, and for the most part, people were pretty high in the 2015 draft. Let's get it started. And we're starting off with the first round draft pick, Laken Tomlinson. Laken spent 2 years with the Lions, 2015 and 16, before he was traded away for a 5th round pick in 2019 to the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners just announced they will not be renewing his contract for that 5th year extension like the Lions did for Ebron last year. They've decided to decline that, and he will be a free agent after 2019 should they not come up with another contract agreement. So if we're going into let's time travel back to 2015. We're going to look at what Alex Reno had to say about the pick during that week after, like we're right now in the week after 2018. Reno gave this pick an A. He was very big on it. A lot of people were at the time. I liked the pick as well because we traded down with the Denver Broncos and also picked up Manny Ramirez and a 5th round pick by trading down. So pretty solid to get, it looked like 2 solid guards out of this deal and a pick. So it seemed to be like everyone was really high on that because we were able to trade down. Alex Reno had this to say: this pick looks so much sexier when you include the fact the Lions were able to trade down and add a couple of extra picks along with veteran guard and former Lion Manny Ramirez. At first, I thought this was a bit early for Tomlinson, but the more I read about it, the more I believed he wasn't going to make it past Tampa Bay at number 34. Tomlinson is a great character guy and a student of the game. Tomlinson was the most efficient pass blocker among all offensive guards last year per Pro Football Focus. I see him winning the starting job day 1, whether it's on the left or right side. He would end up winning the starting job on the left side, and he didn't. Wow, no, he did not win. Ramirez, I think, did, and Tomlinson then I think took over eventually. It's kind of hard to think back, but he ended up playing a role. Wasn't great at it, which eventually got him shipped out. Instead of cutting him, we were able to recoup a 5th round draft pick, which isn't that great. This is the last draft for the Martin Mayhew era. I should have said that earlier. This is before Bob Quinn, so Bob Quinn had no attachment to him, and he had no problem trading him away. So Reno was very sold on him. Bleacher Report was also pretty sold on him with a B+. Originally, I was worried about Tomlinson's ability to hold down the left side because he isn't a great athlete. Detroit's zone blocking scheme requires its big men to create leverage while moving laterally on run plays, but his most important duty will be pass protection. Pro Football Focus's Nate something explains why that won't be an issue. Tomlinson allowed 0 sacks, 0 hits, and 4 hurries last year, the best pass blocking guard in college last year. The value was also proper considering the New England Patriots likely weren't going to let him slip any further. So as long as Adrian Waddle gets his groove back, Mayhew just fixed the offensive line and picked up another 5th rounder. That's a win in any book. I wish it was a win in this book in 2018 because it was not a win. That pick was pretty bad. Tomlinson ended up not playing much of a great role, and for that I give the pick a D-. The other thing that holds it from being an F is he was able to start, and we were able to get a little back for him. Had we just straight up cut him, yes, it would have been an F. So, to waste your 1st round pick like that is kind of sucks. especially not to get much value besides 5th rounder out. But because we really the 5th round pick, I'm saying it's not enough. Bad pick still nonetheless. Moving on to the 2nd round, it was Amir Abdullah was drafted by the Lions at the 54th pick. He's on the team still. He's one of only 3 players from this draft out of the 7 pick that are still with the team. Little spoiler for the ending. Reno went ahead, gave it a B+ at the time. Abdullah isn't the running back I was hoping for, but he's a great fit for Joe Lombardi's scheme and fits the Darren Sproles role to a T. The fumble concerns are overblown and his ball security improved every year at Nebraska. He may not start right away for the Lions, but he'll be the most talented running back on the roster the day he steps foot into training camp. Abdullah is an explosive back and held the top SPARQ score among all running backs this year. I fully expect Lombardi to heavily incorporate Abdullah into his system as a rookie, although he may not be a starter right away. Abdullah brings a home run threat that this offense desperately needs. Did I mention he can return kicks too? Bleacher Report agreed with a B+. Once the Lions cut Reggie Bush loose, running back became a big need if Detroit wanted to maintain a credible home run threat out of the backfield. The selection of Amir Abdullah obliterates that concern. Abdullah has the shiftiness of Bush, but he's much more decisive with his cuts. The zone running game is perfectly suited to his talents because once he finds his crease, he'll explode through it with incredible burst. Goes through some of his 40 time. Goes through some of his timing and stuff from the combine. He's a complete back as well. Unfortunately, part of that package is an inability to secure the ball. Again, there's a lot to like about Abdullah. His combine, isn't indicative of his field speed, and despite his 5'9", 200-pound frame, he'll bring the fight to the tackler. And at this point in the draft, he brings a ton of value. But his warts, fumbles, and pass protection keep the explosive Abdullah from getting an A-range grade. It is now on offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi to use him correctly to make this pick worthwhile. Now, I liked the pick. I will be 100% honest, I liked the pick at the time. I still am not I'm not a huge hater on Abdullah. He has a huge uphill battle this year. Right now, pegging in probably about the 4th on the depth chart for the Lions and the running backs. I also believe he's not had some good offensive lines to run behind, a lot of injuries, and I believe that's has a lot to do with why Abdullah hasn't done great. So I gave it a C-. The only holding it back from being a D is because I believe he's not been able to show his talent because of the situation with the offensive line. We had a great offensive line and he still was putting up his numbers, I would, yes, go more for the D range. But also, he has contributed. He has been a decent weapon for this offense. It's not like he's been a total bum. He hasn't been Mikel LaShore level bad, but he's contributed each year he's been with the Lions, whether it being in the running game or the passing game. I have seen contributions from Abdullah, and I do think he still has talent, and I think if he can get on the field this year, we may see it with a better offensive line. So C- is my grade. This was just the worst pick in the draft, going to round 3 with corner Alex Carter out of Stanford. He spent 2015, 16, and beginning of 17 with the Lions throughout training camp and preseason. But it was mostly because he through injury and being on the practice squad for the Lions. Since being let go by the Lions at the end of preseason this year, he bounced around in practice squads with the Bears, the Patriots, and the Seahawks twice. So before he signed a futures deal with the Seahawks. So he's right now on the Seahawks roster. Will he remain there? Who knows? Lions tried to move him to safety, but it didn't help him either way. So let's go back to the grading, and Alex Reno gave it a B-. This pick made sense, but the trade was a bit of a head-scratcher for me. Still, you never know what other teams have your targets on their draft board, so if Mayhew really wanted this kid, then I can get behind it. Carter's a versatile prospect and can play either safety or cornerback. However, Caldwell has made it clear that they want to play him on the outside. Carter has stiff hips and struggles in man coverage, and many believe he's much better suited in zone coverage. He looks unimpressive on tape, but give him a year to learn behind Rashawn Mathis and let Terrell Austin coach him up for a year, hopefully longer, and I trust that this staff can turn Carter into a solid number 2 cornerback. They couldn't do it. Before I get more into this, Bleacher Report also gave a B-. The need greed continued in the 3rd round as the Lions grabbed Alex Carter after giving up a 5th rounder to move up 8 spots. Carter fits the physical mold that the Lions love on the outside. He stands 6 foot and weighs 196 pounds, and he loves to tackle and mix it up with wide receivers at line of scrimmage. There won't be many game-breaking plays from the Stanford kid, though. Carter only had 2 interceptions in his career, but he balanced that out with 17 passes defended and 72 tackles over the past 2 years. While Detroit did need outside depth in the defensive backfield, it forewent the opportunity to draft out a rounded defensive tackle rotation with explosive penetrators like Michael Bennett and Grady Jarrett. Both of those big men probably would have had a bigger impact, considering Carter might have to transition to safety if the NFL receivers proved to be too quick. I went ahead and gave this pick an F. This is first F I've ever given, and it's because he only got on the field for the Lions in one game. He was on the practice squad. He was then brought up late in the year. He then got put back, and then during the preseason got hurt the next year, played out through IR, and then was gone. He hasn't done anything for the Lions, and he hasn't even been able to get on the field for any other team in the NFL. To waste a third rounder on a guy who's in 3 years has only played one NFL game is pretty embarrassing. So yeah, that's an F. That's just a straight up F for Alex Carter in that pick. Moving to the 4th round, Gabe Wright was drafted in the 4th round, the 113th pick out of Auburn. He spent 2015 with the Lions, 2016 on and off the Browns roster, 2017 then he was on the Dolphins practice squad and got bumped up late in the year. Grading, Alex Reno gave a B+. I'm probably in the minority here, but I absolutely love the trade and it makes a ton of sense. The Lions already had 2 guaranteed 3rd round picks with Ndamukong Suh's departure, so trading him for a future third to move up and grab a defensive tackle was a great move by Mayhew. Wright is raw, but he fits the profile of what the Lions are looking for in a defensive tackle. He's lengthy, 6'3", 300 pounds, and is explosive off the snap, but his biggest weakness is maintaining leverage. He tends to get too upright in the stance and expose his chest, which explains the lack of production at Auburn. Defensive line coach Chris Kirchek can work on his technique. I think Wright can be a solid rotational D-tackle behind Nagata and Walker. Bleacher Report, B+. In a semi-surprising move, Detroit jumped into the 4th round to grab defensive tackle Gabe Wright from Auburn. The 3rd rounder won't hurt too much considering Detroit should have an extra 3rd rounder, as we've already mentioned. Therefore, this grade is all about the pick, which adjusts a need and has a great amount of value. Wright is an explosive defensive tackle who likes to shoot gaps and wreck plays in the backfield. His production fell from 8.5 tackles to a loss in 2013 to 4.5 last year, 2014. He'll be a nice addition behind Tyron Walker and in the locker room. There's still some work to do on his technique, and he has trouble shedding blocks against the run and needs to become a more consistent performer before he can be considered for a starting job. However, Martin Mayhew has hit on a need, value, and scheme fit here. And that's exactly the point of the draft. I went ahead and gave it a D-. It would have been an F because it's almost similar to Carter. He only didn't get to spend much time with the Lions, even though Carter was there for many more years, 2 more years, I shouldn't say many. Wright spent 1 season with the Lions and then got cut in a position of need. And when the team needs bodies in that position and you can't make the team, that's really telling, especially 1 season after being drafted. He was cut, signed by the Browns. Worst team in the NFL that year. It wasn't the worst. They went 1-15, but they actually were the worst team in the NFL that year. Wow. Not worst team in history, worst team that year. But went 1-15, and you couldn't stay on the roster. You're bouncing on and off practice squad for the Browns. You get cut, re-signed to practice squad, brought up, cut, re-signed to practice squad. It was almost cycling that all throughout the season for Wright. So that's another bad pick. That's a D- for me. I can't really get behind that pick too much. The only thing that holds it from being an F like Carter is he at least got on the field for 6 more games for the Lions in his rookie year. Whether he did anything there or not, probably not. I didn't go too much into the stats, but that's another bad pick. Moving to the 5th round, Michael Burton. He spent 2015 and 16 for the Lions before getting cut and signing with the Bears in 2017, and he's still with the Bears today for this upcoming season so far. Alex Reno gave it a C. The Lions needed a fullback and only had, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, on the roster prior to this pick. I'm all for taking a fullback. I just had no idea who Michael Burton was before the pick. After doing a little bit of digging, I've come to admire the player, but I'm still a bit skeptical of the pick. Burton is a guy who is going to help revamp this offense, given the power run game they desire. He has connections with current tight ends and assistant head coach Ron Prince from their Rutgers days, so they definitely did their research on this kid. It appears yet he's another high-character guy and another former captain. My only knock on the pick is that there's several other players I would have rather had taken, like wide receiver Trey McBride or defensive tackle Michael Bennett. But in the end, the Lions got their starting fullback. Bleacher Report also gave a C. Jed Collins left for the Dallas Cowboys, leaving the Lions with yet another need in the backfield. And yet again, Martin Mayhew picked a player to fill a hole. Obviously, Mayhew didn't feel comfortable with, not going to try to pronounce that guy's name, who was the only fullback prospect on the roster. The selection of Michael Burton from Rutgers probably puts him out of a job. Burton isn't the biggest fullback at 5'11" and 242 pounds, but his build should fit Detroit's offense. Burton isn't a guy who will explode through a linebacker, rather he'll find his man and keep him engaged, and he's also a decent pass catcher. Fullback was a need, and it was filled. However, with guys like receiver Trey Burton on the board, this seems like Martin Mayhew's first reach on the weekend. I gave it a D+. I liked Burton, I really did, but when you get cut so soon in your career, you have to knock it down a bit. I also went ahead and looked at Trey McBride, since both guys brought him up, and he's a wide receiver, as they mentioned. But it also hasn't done anything. He has 9 career catches between 3 teams in 3 years, so I'd say it's kind of a wash there between picking McBride and picking Burton. So my absolute favorite pick of this draft, and the one guy that I think has definitely been gave the Lions the most value, was in the 6th round, Quandre Diggs out of Texas, who plays corner, who also has shown he can play safety for the Lions. This last year, he spent 2015 to now with the Lions, and Reno gave it an A+. I mentioned this a few months ago that I thought the Lions should take 2 cornerbacks this year, 1 outside and 1 nickelback. Diggs is an intelligent and instinctual corner who will battle out with Bill Bentley, Nevin Lawson, and Josh Wilson for the starting nickelback spot. That's a lot of guys to compete for one spot, but after dealing with 2 season-ending injuries and absolutely getting burned all years by slot receiver, it's a necessary problem to have. Bleacher Report also given an A. The best player available approach finally reared its head in the 6th round, and the result was an excellent choice. Quandre Diggs will immediately push Nevin Lawson and Bill Bentley for the nickel or dime spot in the secondary. He's only 5'9", but packs 196 pounds on that frame, so he'll be able to be aggressive in the slot against faster receivers. He also fits the profile that defensive coordinator Terrell Austin and head coach Jim Caldwell desire in defensive backs. Diggs will throw his weight around in the run game and is smart enough to recognize routes to create turnover opportunities. Mayhew finally got to flex his best player available muscle, and it certainly looks like it'll work out. I went ahead, gave them pick an A-. The only reason it's a little lower than what those guys said is an A+ and an A. Honestly, I probably could have given it an A+, seeing as he was a 6th round pick who has contributed a lot for the Lions. Was a great corner for his rookie year. Kind of took a big step back in his 2nd year, but in his 3rd year, started off strong as a corner again, and then only got stronger when they moved him to safety after the injury to Tavon Wilson last year. I love the Diggs pick. He's probably, like I said, the best pick in this draft out of the 6th round, and it's interesting to note, they mentioned the best player available rearing its head again. That was kind of the whole Martin Mayhew, you draft the best player available instead of picking out of need. The previous 5 picks were all need picks, and they have not done very well. But as soon as he forgot about that and just kind of went, okay, best player available, Quandre Diggs, he got a steal. Get a 6th round guy who starts his rookie year, starts his 2nd year before being injured, and then starts his 3rd year is pretty stellar. I said A-. I'm going to bump it up to an A. That's a solid A pick. That's what you need out of the 6th round. If you can get someone like that, usually that's a depth pick, but he has been a star for he has been a stud for the Lions with so far in his career, and that's all you can ask for. That's the best case scenario out of the 6th round. Moving to the 7th round, this is the Diggs. Like I mentioned, there's only 3 guys in this draft that have made it, that are still with the Lions today, and that was Abdullah, Diggs, and their 7th round pick, Corey Robinson out of South Carolina. He was picked with only 8 picks remaining in the draft. I guess it was more than that. But the 23rd pick, I forget about compensatory picks and all that, but 23rd pick, he spent 2015 to now with the Lions, like I mentioned. Reno gave this pick an A. Looks like I ended the draft with 3 out of the 4 correct bold predictions relating to the Lions. This is a great get for the Lions, as Robinson will likely serve as a swing tackle and add some more competition to the starting right tackle spot. Robinson fits the profile of long-armed OTs that the Lions have coveted since 2013. Bleacher Report gave it a B. The Lions capped off their draft class with a big offensive tackle from South Carolina. Corey Robinson stands 6'7" and checks in at 324. The Lions love height and length along the lines, and their newest tackle doesn't disappoint. And despite those long arms that should limit his strength, he still put up 28 bench reps per NFL.com. That'll not only help him open holes in the run game, but should assist him in redirecting pass rushers with his length. Robinson will come in and take Adrian Waddle's job this year. He's a developmental guy who could blossom into proper coaching, making him a smart 7th round pick. I gave this pick a B-, and that's kind of sad that your 7th round pick is your 2nd best pick in the, well, maybe not 2nd. Him and Abdullah could probably be on the same points, same level, but because it was a 7th round pick, I gave it a B-. He's played in 23 games for the Lions, starting 8 of them. And so when you can get solid depth out of the 7th round, like I said, with Diggs, it's a solid starting role. With Robinson, it's more what you expect. You want him to be, the best case there is probably about a good depth guy, and he's become a pretty good depth guy for the Lions. Still on the team this year, though that could change with the drafting of Crosby out of Oregon this year. So we're going to go more into now the national and what other people think. NFL.com's Bucky Brooks gave it a B. Kind of just going along, just filling needs. SI.com gave it an A-. Bleacher Report, B+. Dave Burkett from Detroit Free Press gave it a B. Mel Kiper gave it a B. I'm giving it a D+, and I have the benefit of hindsight. These guys didn't, so I'm not trying to trash them. I'm just trying to prove the point that you can't necessarily know who's going to do what right off the bat after when their career starts. You just don't know. So, like I said, this is not a knock on any of the guys that rank the drafts or grade the drafts right after they happen. This is more just why you shouldn't do it. So, like, if you look at when this draft happened, Lions fans were ecstatic. They loved this draft because they're like, we got now our offensive line's fixed, we got depth in the offensive line, we got a running game fixed, and everyone was just super stoked for the season to begin. And then the Lions lost a bunch of games to begin the season, turned it around there towards the end, finished 7-9. They were like 1-7 at one point, I believe, in the season. It was really bad, 1-6 maybe. It was really bad to start that 2016 season, or 2015 season, my bad. So, these guys didn't really help much at all, if at all. Diggs definitely is your best pick in the draft. Corey Robinson and Abdullah. I mean, you'd probably put Robinson above him because he's a 7th-round pick who's contributed, versus Abdullah hasn't lived up to expectations. I do put that more on the offensive line. But when you got Alex Carter, who only plays 1 game before being cut, Gabe Bright only 7 games before being cut, and then you look at Tomlinson, 1st-round draft pick, who was on the verge of getting cut. Luckily, they were able to recoup a 5th-round pick. And then Michael Burton, who gets just cut and brought to the Bears right after that, before the 2017 season began. 4 out of your 7 guys have gone off your team before even 2 years, so that's a little worrisome. And there could be potential for Abdullah to leave this too, and if they decide to cut him and decide he's not worth keeping on the roster after going through training camp and preseason. So it could be only 2 guys still on the team, and like I said, Corey Robinson's not even guaranteed to be here still. It's not as bad as some of the previous drafts before this. We'll get into that more later, but this was definitely one of Mayhew's worst drafts throughout his career and his tenure. Now, if you like the video, go ahead and leave a like down below. Make sure you leave some comments down below. Let me know what you thought about the draft in 2015. It was a pretty ugly draft. And make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. I'm going to keep working through these. I'm going to at least want to work through all of Mayhew's draft. If I'm really depressed, I might look at He Who Should Not Be Named's drafts, the general manager from 2000 to 2008. I might look at those drafts. They're really sad and depressing. But I might do that if I feel like wanting to be sad. So make sure you do all that stuff down below, and I will see you guys all next time.